Alright, so today we have here my new SAAB. It's a bit different to the Japanese cars I usually buy. It's in decent condition overall. It's got some broken interior bits. It's got a ripped leather driver's seat. The heater and AC controls are a bit... they only work sometimes. It's got two bald tyres, the rocker cover's leaking, the front crank seal's leaking, and it has a blown clutch. But it's a 2-litre turbo and it's manual, so I started ripping apart. To do a clutch on one of these, the first thing I've done is pulled the battery out, pulled the battery tray out, removed the charge pipe, removed the negative terminal, I think it is, the negative wire, or it might be the positive wire. One of them's bolted to the gearbox casing. I removed that. Yeah, the charge pipe. What else? The airbox, because you've got to remove the serpentine belt to take off one of the alternator brackets to get the intermediate axle shaft out. So I pulled the airbox out. I'm about to take the serpentine belt off. Then the next thing I'm going to have to do is lock there's a plug on top of the gearbox. You've got to pull that out and put a 4 or 5 mil Allen key, I forget which one, to lock it in. You put the gearbox in 4th gear, pull the plug out, put the Allen key in there, and it locks the gearbox in 4th gear. Then the next thing you got to do is go back inside the car, put the car in 3rd gear, and there's a pin there to lock the shifter, the internal the shifter inside the car in 3rd gear. And then you're able to unbolt the shifter linkage, I believe. I sprayed down the bolts with WD-40. I removed the O2 sensor connector. Yeah, just shit on top. I just want to do everything on top before I have to fucking jack the car up, because I need to wait because I don't have a 32mm socket to do the axle fucking nuts to pull the drive shafts and CVs out of the fucking car. So I'm just doing everything I can on top. I'm going to pull the exhaust off, like the downpipe anyway, which is down there. That's the downpipe there. Yeah, it's pretty, I don't know, there's a couple of write-ups on how to do it, so I'm just following them. Never worked on a SAAB in my life. Legit, never even done an oil change on them when I was a mechanic. But yeah, I decided to take a risk, bought a clutch with a blown SAAB. I bought a SAAB with a blown clutch, sorry. Oh yeah, and I fucking took the fucking struts off the bonnet and put a broomstick there so it goes almost vertical. So I've got light, because as you can see, the light is directly above the car, and with the bonnet on an angle I couldn't see anything. And there's a car over there and I can't put the SAAB back any further to get it below the light. So I did that. But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I'll update you guys further down the track when I get more shit removed off the car. And I'll probably film a walk around of the car once it's put back together. Alright, so a bit of a progress update. It's been a couple of days. I forgot where I last left off, but I removed the downpipe. I have removed the wheels, pushed the axles out of the hubs. I dropped the subframe and lower control arms down all as one unit and fucked that off. I have a jack supporting the engine. Here's the subframe over here. That's the lower control arm, there's the sway bar, and that's the subframe itself. Yeah, I've got a jack supporting the engine so it doesn't droop down. I removed the transmission mount from the subframe. I removed the plastic liners underneath the car. Airbox, I removed the serpentine belt. The next step is to remove the drain the gearbox, remove an earth that goes between the gearbox and the fender. Then, yeah, once the gearbox is drained, pull the axles out, remove the intermediate axle,
that's bolted to the back of the alternator. Once both the axles are removed, I will undo the clutch line, and then I'll start undoing the bell housing bolts. I want to leave the clutch line close to the end so it doesn't just drip all the fluid out. A trick you can do with that to stop it dripping as much is to, whether it's a brake or a clutch, put the pedal in. So just get a pole and push it between the seat and the pedal, and it will hold. It basically blocks the path. It just stops as much fluid leaking out. It's pretty much that it. It's just that. And yeah, so that's where I'm up to at the moment. It's really not a hard job. I've never worked on a SAAB before. I was expecting this to be hard. The hardware I've removed is that's all the hardware I've removed. That's the subframe bolts. That's the axle nuts. That's all the plastic liner screws and nuts and shit. That's the dump pipe and blow-off valve hose. They're the dump pipe nuts and blow-off valve hose clamps. That is the battery tray hardware. That's the inspection plate off the back of the gearbox. That was 2 to 11 millimeters actually. Now the things you're going to need for this are 18s, 13s, 17s, 16s, 11s in spanners and sockets, and an array of extensions and your general tools. Now I didn't have 18mm and the axle nuts are 32mm. I didn't have one of them, and I didn't have an 18mm spanner. Oh, lizard! Look at that. Oh, is that a frog or a lizard? Yeah. Anyway, that's where I'm up to at the moment. I'm absolutely filthy. Yeah, the SAAB isn't really as hard to work on as I thought it was going to be. It's no different than any other car, really. I was expecting complicated shit and fucking... Yeah, it's fucking pretty easy, really. If you own one of these and you're worried about working on it, just fucking get stuck in, man. It's really not that hard. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can see, like... If you're really 100% unsure of where to even begin, look up online, and someone might have done it before and documented it. But realistically, you can just dive in, and if a bolt needs to be removed to get to another bolt, or that bracket needs to be removed to drop this part down, just pull it apart, man. Just label everything like I've done into bags, and just keep track of your hardware. Don't lose things. Take photos if you need to. It's really not that hard to fucking... take photos to remember where stuff goes. It's as simple as pulling your phone out of your pocket, taking a photo. It takes 2 seconds, and it can, like the belt orientation about which pulleys it goes around and whatnot. Things like that can hold you up, and sometimes you can't find that information online if it's an obscure car. But taking photos and things like that, or just if you've got a good memory, just remember. It depends how used to working on cars you are. But yeah, just get stuck in, man. Yeah, well anyway, I'll update this when I've pulled the axles out and started undoing the bell housing bolts. I might even update it after I pulled the gearbox out. I'm really not sure. But yeah. Alright. So the gearbox is out. One problem I found was this mount here. The rear engine mount. There's meant to be a bottom half, and it's over there somewhere. It's a hydraulic mount. It's split in half. Here's the reason I pulled the gearbox out in the first place. As you can see, there's no material left whatsoever. On that's the flywheel side. The pressure plate side, is the one that stripped all the material off. That's all the clutch disc. All just fucking clutch dust. But yeah, where I left off was, I think that the subframe was out, and yeah, I think that's where I left off. Yeah, so where I left off was, I think I'd just pulled the subframe out and removed the axles from the hubs. Then I removed the passenger side axle, which is the short one, and then what did I do then? There was a couple of small things. Oh yeah, the transmission mount that's underneath the battery tray, I removed that. I removed the intermediate shaft bracket that holds the intermediate axle shaft to the motor, to the engine block. That's a bit tricky. The way in the instructions I read online, it didn't say that. It just said you could have to remove the bolts and that's it, which is technically all you do have to remove. But I had to get a flathead screwdriver in there and lever and pivot the alternator upwards so I could slide the bracket out behind the alternator, because you remove the bottom bolt is bolted to the bottom pivot on the alternator is bolted to the intermediate shaft bracket, so you remove that bottom pivot bolt, and you realistically cracking the top bolt on the alternator would be a better idea. It'd make it easier to pivot, but to get to that bolt you have to remove the tensioner, so it's just how much stuff do I want to remove to get to make the job easier. So what I did was I just got a big flathead screwdriver and levered the alternator upwards enough to slide the bracket out, and then I pulled the axle out of the gearbox, loosened the bell housing bolts, undid the clutch line. I put the pedal in slightly to stop it leaking. It leaked a little bit, but it's not a constant feed and it's not draining the reservoir. And then once the shaft was out, I was able to just get a big flathead in between the block and the motor and just kind of lever the gearbox off back and forth off the dowels, and I just grabbed onto it and pulled the cunt out, and fucking she literally fell out into my lap. And it's light. It's light for a gearbox, but it's still 40-50 kilos that just fell straight into my lap. And yeah, then I just ripped the clutch off, and well, you can see what's left of the clutch. So yeah, that's where I'm going to end this video. Basically, this video is about removing the transmission. I'll do another. I can't do the next video, which is putting the clutch into like clutch in fucking few weeks at least. I'm going to put the subframe back in so the car's movable and I can actually fucking steer the car. But yeah, you don't have to do that obviously if you're just doing the clutch. So this first video is going to be removing the gearbox and clutch. There's 6 bolts that hold the clutch to the flywheel, by the way, and they're 12mm. So yeah, it's really not as hard as I didn't need any specialty tools apart from fucking some hex bits and 18mm, 13mm, 16mm, odd sizes, but they're, at the end of the day, they're just sockets. If you buy a kit, just make sure it has that stuff in it. If you're going out to buy tools specifically, you could just buy the sockets themselves, but to get the 18mm spanner, it was $18 for a single spanner and $24 for a full kit that had the spanner. So, you know what I mean? You may as well buy a kit, spend the extra few dollars, and you'll have a nice toolkit at the end of the day. I bought deep sockets, hex sockets, all those stuff. If you want me to do a toolbox, what's in my toolbox, I'll do that, because that'll be easy enough. But yeah, I'm going to end this video here, guys. Have a nice day. Keep on SAABing.